You know that feeling when you're walking through the savannah and you see a rustle in the leaves, your heart starts pounding, you can feel yourself getting warm and sweating. Your biggest fear is about to be realized. It's a lion, or a tiger, or a bear. Oh my. That is the fight or flight system, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. Now, we don't have to deal with a lot of bears in the modern world, especially not in England. However, we do have to deal with a number of stressful situations. So, we are going to look at how our body deals with those stresses, what triggers fight or flight. We're going to look at the HPA axis and the SAM pathway, how they work together to produce a fight or flight response. We're going to look at what happens in response to a chronic stressor, and we're going to see whether or not the fight or flight response is the same for males or females. So, the fight or flight response, this is the body's physiological reaction to stressors. A stressor is a situation we find threatening or dangerous. It involves the activation of the HPA axis and sympathetic adrenal medullary system. This is designed to provide energy and arousal for rapid response and action, i.e. running or fighting. It has evolved to deal with life-threatening situations, the lion, the tiger, the bear. However, in the modern world, it can be triggered by fairly safe and innocuous behaviours such as public speaking or getting lost or some such thing like that. The first step in the fight or flight system then, appraisal. When we are confronted with our bear, we appraise the situation. The fight or flight system begins with this. It evaluates information from sensory processing systems, the afferent division, this could be vision or hearing, areas of the brain involved in memory and emotion, such as the limbic system, the hippocampus, the amygdala, are triggered, and this is really important because this indicates how afraid we should feel. If the situation is considered to be dangerous, then the hypothalamus is alerted and our body springs into action by activating the HPA and the SAM pathway. The HPA axis then consists of when a stressor is triggered, the H stands for hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus, hormonal signals keep the sympathetic nervous system working. The hypothalamus releases a chemical messenger called corticotrophic releasing hormone, CRH, into the bloodstream. You already know what effect this has on the pituitary gland. It triggers the release of the ACTH, adrenocorticotropic hormone. That then contacts the adrenal glands, which sit on top of the kidneys, remember? And that stimulates the adrenal cortex to release various stress-related hormones, such as cortisol. Cortisol is responsible for several effects in the body that are important for fight or flight. Some of these are positive, for example, quick burst of energy and dulling of the feeling of pain, so lower sensitivity to pain. And whereas others are negative, such as cognitive impairment and lower immune system. Just a little story about sensitivity to pain. When I was training many years ago as a kickboxer, one of the things I noticed was during the fight you would get struck many times. However, you wouldn't feel any of it. And then later on that evening, or perhaps if you went straight to bed after you went home in the morning, you'd wake up stiff as a board and completely in agony. Bruises and pain everywhere. Whilst the HPA axis was ready and preparing me for fight in this case, couldn't feel a thing. As soon as it shuts down, pain kicks in. So that's the HPA axis, and we kind of know this already from last lesson. The SAM is part of the sympathetic nervous system. The release of ACTH from the pituitary activates parts of the sympathetic nervous system, which in turn leads to activation of the adrenal medulla. which results in the release of adrenaline and noradrenaline. Now, you've heard of adrenaline and you know the effect it has, increased heart rate. Noradrenaline constricts blood vessels, remember, and the combined effect here is to increase the pressure by pumping faster and constricting the arteries and veins I should say, that the blood has to travel through. So it's increasing the blood pressure. SNS also has direct links to heart and can directly stimulate it and increase it. Adrenaline has a slightly different effect that maintains a high heart rate. Increased heart rate means more oxygen and glucose being pumped around the body to muscles and tissues that need it. And this allows us to quickly engage in physical activity. Energy in the body is largely stored in the form of glycogen, which can be broken down into glucose for use in respiration. Activation of HPA and SAM increase mobilization of these energy reserves. So the two systems work together to ready us for action. And here is an example of the system at work. Here, it is a feedback system like, as we said about the HPA axis, which is part of the endocrine system, which is responsible for readying our fight or flight response. The parasympathetic nervous system then. So this is after the fight, after the flight. We sometimes call this the rest and digest system or response. Once the stressor has passed, the parasympathetic division kicks in. And it's the parasympathetic division's responsibility to calm us down. It lowers our heart rate and thus our blood pressure comes down, and it slowly allows digestion to resume. So that is the fight or flight response. Stress and illness then. Let's evaluate the fight or flight response. Adrenaline and noradrenaline raise heart rate and blood pressure. If we are consistently in situations that are stressful, this increases the amount of adrenaline and noradrenaline that we have in our bodies. This increases our blood pressure, and by increasing the blood pressure, we may wind up eroding the lining of various blood vessels, and this can result in hemorrhaging and internal bleeding. Long-term corticosteroid secretion can lead to a suppressed immune system, and this can make infection more likely. And we looked at Kiecolt-Glazer's study that showed that stressful jobs or stressful situations such as exams make us more vulnerable to illness. We have a lower T cell count as a result. So chronic stress is bad for the health. Research from Taylor also argues that the idea of the fight or flight response is actually fairly biased from a gender point of view. Taylor argues that females do not have a fight or flight response in the same way that men do. They don't have the fight instinct, for example, and running away is potentially dangerous. Females' behavioural response is more of a tend to befriend. According to Taylor, they evolved a tend to befriend mechanism which encourages them to build alliances. This is because running would put their offspring at risk, and also fighting would put their offspring at risk, whereas building allies is the safest way to protect one's offspring from predators and rival tribes. So the argument is that women develop a slightly different system. Some evaluations here, I'm just going to hide myself up here for a second. So Gray argues that the first step of fight or flight is not fight or flight, or appraisal, is actually avoidance. It is appraisal. Appraisal leads to avoidance. We try to avoid dangerous situations. Most animals also have a freeze mechanism. The deer, the reason why, whenever you're driving along the motorway, you'll see foxes and rabbits and squirrels and deer, is because when they run out and they see this stressor car driving towards them, they will freeze. Now this has a stop, look and listen strength or bonus, but it also has drawbacks. Von Douwens et al. Challenges classic view that under stress men respond with fight or flight, and Von Douwens actually carried out a study and noted that stress can actually increase cooperative behaviour even in men. And he cites a number of disasters and situations, such as on 9/11 there were people who ran back into the burning buildings who had nothing to do with, they didn't know anyone who worked in there, they had no affiliation, they just did it. And this is primarily because we are social animals. We're not individualistic, we're not lone wolf packs, we're actually community based organisms who need social interaction. And Lee and Harley seem to have found a genetic basis for Taylor's argument that there are differences between men and women when it comes to fight or flight. The SRY gene found on the Y chromosome directs male development, promoting aggression and resulting in the fight element of the fight or flight response. SRY may prime males to respond to stress by releasing adrenaline, and this could lead to that more aggressive response. So that is the fight or flight system. Some exam questions you might be asked: describe the fight or flight system. That's a pretty obvious one. How about this one? An application. Joyce is about to open her results envelope. She is applying for a top institution and needs to get 3 A's. Her heart rate is high, her heart is pounding, she has a dry mouth, she's sweating and has butterflies in her stomach. Using your knowledge of the fight or flight response, explain her symptoms. So here we're going to talk about seeing the stressor, we're going to talk about the initiation of the HPA axis and the SAM system. We're going to talk about shutting off digestion, which is why she has butterflies in her stomach, she's sweating, and so forth. So we're going to take each of these elements and apply it back. And you may get a 12 marker that says discuss the fight or flight response to stress. Here, this is one of the few topics that has evaluations that you could use, such as Taylor, Gray, Von Douwens, and Lee. So this has been the fight or flight. We have talked about the HPA axis and the SAM pathway. We have talked about the different hormones released by the hypothalamus, the pituitary, and the adrenal glands. We've talked about the effect the SAM system has on heart rate and blood pressure, and the purpose, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which kicks in after the stressor has passed. As always, I hope that you have enjoyed this presentation, got something out of it, and if you would like any further information, please do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you very much for your time, and I will see you around. Bye now.